I want to add a little bit more on the caveats about interpretation of climate impacts on agriculture and societies, because in general environmental determinism not only assumes that climate can explain the various transitions in societies and cultures, but also that some of the so-called collapses in societies happened because of climate-driven factors like droughts and so on. And there are some strongly disagreeing interpretations of that narrative as well. So we can start with Mark Pagel's paper in Nature, which summarizes his book called Adapted to Culture, where it argues that our ability to build on and modify inventions has given us a selective advantage. And you can see it shows tools and maybe agricultural instruments and so on. So in the context of climate and agriculture, then we have to think about how this unique ability of the nature of humans, in terms of a capacity for culture, would have played a role in the agricultural revolution, evolution of society, complexities, militarization, and so on, and responses to large climate perturbations. Can societies really collapse, or do they just slowly disappear? That's the difference between collapse and slow dissipation or disappearance, right? Transmitting technology and skills is our strategy for survival, which says also something about how agriculture may have spread across regions, across societies in the same region, sharing of knowledge, information, and technology. We became ultra-social through visual theft, the stealing of others' ideas. So this suggests that we can watch somebody making something new, like a spear to catch fish, or a big animal to kill an animal from far, and we can improve on this technology, and the other person will want to avoid such visual theft and resulting competition by forming a group with you, and then we work together, and it becomes a non-zero sum game that somebody has an expertise in building tools, you have expertise in something else, and together you both benefit. So these non-zero agreements among humans are argued to be very important. I think there's a book by Robert Wright which is titled Non-Zero. Language evolved from a need to negotiate. We said before that maybe gossip and the resulting social bonding resulted in language, but this one argues that there would have been need to negotiate, especially through the Holocene, as agriculture and settled societies began to grow. So then language may have evolved from the need to negotiate, whether it's for sharing things, cooperating, or avoiding conflicts and so on. Evolution has honed the range of our talents. So this so-called social brain or shared brain idea is that we share ideas, and then everybody's brain works together on one big problem that one brain cannot solve. The other idea is that humans are uniquely group focused. Many will deck themselves out in their team's colors. So the faces here are Asian and the letters here look Korean. So this must be some Korean game, for example, soccer or something. And this is a youth. So obviously, as we grow up, we have fanatic attachments, adorations, and fanhood to our teams. And usually it's all fun and competition. Of course, in some cases, losing team may get violent and so on. But we also train our kids to become fans of our teams or culture in many ways. This little kid became famous as a meme. He's wearing the Rotterdam shirt here and got some colors on his face, and you can see his facial expression and his middle finger as remarkably expressive disapproval of his opponents, I suppose. So this group focus, does it always mean cooperation, or does it mean us versus them, that if you're not in my group then you're an enemy? So these arguments and how that affects sharing can also matter. But there are also theories that suggest that groups can reform constantly based on what common benefit is being pursued. Okay. The other idea is from this paper in Science, which argues that societies don't really collapse. Collapse? What collapse? Societal change revisited. Old notions about how societies fall are at odds with new data painting a more nuanced, complicated, and possibly hopeful view of human adaptation to change. The painting here is of barbarians at the gate. Alaric and his Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 Common Era. So obviously then the question still is whether such militarization and invasions and conquers were a result of excess food production and wealth and disposable wealth, or whether it was related to climate impact, crop losses, pestilence, and need to acquire new land and new resources and so on. But the idea is also is that climate perturbations and barbarians at the gate act as incentives for innovation. So climate perturbation, droughts may not necessarily lead to collapse, but may lead to innovations in agriculture, crop adaptation, water management, water harvesting, and so on and so forth. So these ideas have to be understood better when we interpret old archaeological and evidences recorded. So this is an example: searching the jungle. UCL's Elizabeth Graham sees continuity where others see collapse. As Mayan potters continued to make sophisticated wares after the classic period. Classic period is 2000 CE to about 800 CE. So this would argue that there was no sudden collapse, that there was a gradual decline and at the end, which tells you a different story of how I have a strong sound of winds blowing here. Hopefully it doesn't spoil the recording. Okay, so let me close the window just quickly. It's been raining like hell in Mumbai for a few days, but today it's a bit dry, but it's really windy. Okay, so this is the southwest Phoenix region dwindling. In their heyday, the Hohokam had impressive platforms just outside Phoenix, but population estimates from archaeological sites show a gradual drop-off in the people living in the southern part of the US Southwest, which is this curve. Including the Phoenix area, while the population in the north was more stable. So you can see the population numbers here. The northern population centers remained fairly stable with the gradual decline, whereas this one declined a little bit more rapidly and then remained very low. So the idea of collapse doesn't really work when it takes like 100 years for the population transitions. That's the main point made by this. So in that context, looking at selected centers of agricultural origins and their respective crops, starting from the Americas, Eastern North America, Mesoamerica, and Andean South America, and lowland South America had crops ranging from sunflower and tobacco to common bean, lima bean, avocado, tomato, papaya, here aracacha, capsicum pepper, strawberry, squash, quinoa, amaranth, and cassava, peanuts, pineapple, cacao, acai, Brazil nut, cashew, and guarana. Southwest Asia, the Fertile Crescent, where agriculture presumably evolved the earliest, had wheat, barley, pea, lentil, chickpea, onion, date, palm, and grape, so real domestication of wild cereals. Central Asia had apple, pomegranate, horseradish, and walnut. South Asia, so let's go to Africa here: sorghum, pearl millet, cowpea, okra, coffee, watermelon, hyacinth bean, shea, and teff. South Asia, centered around India, had mung bean or the green gram, mango, indica rice, giant taro, ginger, jute, eggplant, and so on. China had millets, rice, tea, peach, lychee, mulberry, soybean, and citrus. And Southeast Asia, Sunda and Sahu, had banana, sugarcane, durian, coconut, sago palm, clove, and breadnut. Obviously, there is different climate in different regions during those days, when these things evolved, and there are differences in the mix of crops and fruits and vegetables, which must have dependence on local climate. And then the question is whether serendipitous domestication of locally available varieties happened, and if exchanges happened like Japonica and Indica rice types here, how were they done? By military conquers, by cooperation, exchanges, networks, or this affinity for groups, and so on and so forth. So that those are kind of not such easy questions to answer, but we need to keep these in mind when we interpret past climates and past archaeological evidences for societies, their declines. Let's not use the word collapse in light of what we just said. And we'll look at climate variability throughout in these different regions. Again, there is no systematic way to do it. We'll just use the sequence used by the book, and we will read different interpretations of different anthropologists for how societies responded and how climate impacted agriculture, and whether agricultural evolution and adaptations were preceded by social structure changes, or whether climate and agriculture together affected the social structure evolution and so on. Not completely understood well, but it is interesting to look at different interpretations of the evidences by different researchers, which tells you that when we want to put this in the context of what is happening now with global warming and where we are headed, we have to keep all those things in mind. And we will also see examples of how during the Holocene there has been feedback from vegetation changes to climate. So in terms of differences of when rainfall changed and when vegetation changed, and how those proxies were potentially misinterpreted before, and so on. So we will get into the science of the Holocene, agriculture, human interactions, but I just wanted to put up these caveats, and we'll keep coming back to the caveats as we go along, just so that we are aware that there are always narratives involved which have implicit and explicit hypotheses behind them in terms of environmental determinism and the role of climate in determining agriculture and evolution of humans. Okay?